Adrian N. Breitfelder, City Clerk, you are hereby directed to call a special session of the City Council to be held on Monday, April 28th, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. in the historic Federal Building for the purpose of adopting the Fiscal Year 2026 Annual Budget and 5-Year Capital Improvement Program.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to a special session of the Dubuque City Council for April 28th, 2025. As a reminder to our participants, you can provide in-person input or virtual audio and written input during tonight's public hearing. Input options during the live meeting include in-person attendees may approach the podium when the mayor asks if there is any public input for the public hearing. Remote attendees can log in to GoToMeeting using the login links, phone numbers, and access code that appear on the broadcast and live stream and posted on the front page of the meeting agenda. This option includes audio input and written chat input. If you are participating via computer, indicate that you would like to speak in the chat function. If you are participating via phone, indicate that you would like to speak during the appropriate section. All comments, whether in person or virtual, must be accompanied by a name and address. Additionally, written public input is accepted by contacting the City Council directly from the city's webpage at www.cityofdubuque.org/councilcontacts and through the City Clerk's office email at ctyclerk@cityofdubuque.org. Attendance for the session is as follows. Mayor Kavanaugh.
Here.
Council members Farber.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Resnick.
Here.
Roussel.
Here.
Sprank.
Here.
Wethel.
Here.
City Manager Van Milligan.
Here.
Thank you. And City Attorney Brumwell.
Here.
Thank you. Our public hearing this evening is amended fiscal year 2026 budget recommendation.
We have an item with 2 resolutions, just so you know.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones.
move to receive and file the documents and adopt the 2 resolutions.
Second by Farber.
And a motion by Jones and a second by Farber. Mike, I'm guessing I'm coming to you, huh?
Actually, Jennifer Larson, the Chief Financial Officer, will be making the presentation.
Jennifer, I guess I'm coming to you, huh?
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Jennifer Larson, Chief Financial Officer. I will be presenting the public hearing to adopt the fiscal year 26 budget. The budget process starts out with the Mayor and City Council goal setting process, which is a 3-day process, and that's the foundation for what departments submit as their budget requests and this overall process. These are the top priorities and high priorities that departments tried to accomplish through this budget process. And the City Council also adopted creating an equitable community and organization of choice, and this philosophy is also adopted throughout the budget process. So we also look at equity as we're looking at different improvement packages and capital improvement programs throughout the budget process. Dubuque has what I would consider a very transparent budget process, probably what I would say the best in the state. Again, as I mentioned, there are 3 City Council goal setting sessions. Those were in August. And the city manager holds a budget public input meeting in November. Actually, in this room, it's very informal, so any resident can come and have a chat with the city manager and ask questions or provide budget input to the city manager. We also set the public hearing on the maximum levy in early March and then held that hearing at the end of March. And then we had a meeting to set the public hearing to adopt the budget and 7 other public meetings where departments presented their budget to City Council and the public. And then, of course, tonight, the public hearing to adopt the budget. So technically 14 separate public meetings and only 4 are required by the state code. And at any time, residents can submit public input on the city's website. So we've also received quite a number of those as well. We do have, excuse me, a revised budget recommendation that before Mayor and City Council to address some of the items that were brought forth to this public hearing. One is the full-time maintenance position in the Parks and Rec Department to mainly service Eagle Point Park. So this is upgrading a part-time position to full-time. Airport, additional marketing dollars, match for the Transportation Alternative Program and engineering. So this is a grant for a trail project for the B Branch project. Linwood Cemetery Partnership Program, removal of the Eagle Point Park water tower, and replacement of sanitary sewer flow meters, so 10 of those flow meters. Moving on to look at the 2026 city property tax rate. First, looking at our current consolidated rate, so we won't know the total consolidated rate for 26 until end of May, possibly end of June. So just looking at what our current one is, we can see that we do have 5 main taxing bodies here. So the school district, city, county, Northeast Iowa Community College, and then independent, which is made up of county and city assessor, the county hospital, and a couple of other smaller levies. So we can see by this chart, the school district is the largest at 43.1%, followed by the city at 33%, and then the third largest is the county at 18.7%. The revised recommendation before you is a total recommended budget of $276,430,089, and that is both operating and capital separated out by operating. Operating budget is $184,528,990, and capital is $91,901,249. Looking specifically at general fund expenditures, public safety makes up 42.8% of what is being budgeted in the general fund, and that is mostly funded by tax dollars. Culture and recreation is next at 18.8%, and then general government at 16.2%. Taking a look at what our property tax rate has been historically from fiscal year 22 through 25, you can see that we have kept our tax rate change pretty low. 22 was no change for the homeowner. 23 and 24 were both 3% increases, and 25 was a 5% increase to the average homeowner. Our proposed 26 property tax levy is just over 29.8 million, so that's a 5.77% increase, and our tax rate is a 1.38% increase over 25, so $10.06 per 1,000 of assessed value. Again, looking at that tax levy and the impact to the various classes of property, the average residential, the change would be 3.9% increase, or $33.38. Commercial would be a 1.78% increase, or a dollar change of $74.26. And average industrial would be an increase of 1.71%, or a dollar increase of $85.68. Again, a little broader view of the impacts on property. This slide is essentially the same as the last one, except there's a few more values for commercial. We have $150,000 value on commercial. That would be an increase of $25.98, or 3.8%. Commercial property up to $300,000 would be an increase of $44.53, or 2.2%. And commercial $450,000 would be about an increase of $63.07, or 1.9%. And then our average value is actually $540,594, or the 1.8% increase. Excuse me. Looking at the tax rate comparison to the largest cities in Iowa with a population greater than 50,000, about half of the cities listed here have now certified their budgets. So a lot of these rates are now final. Dubuque has the lowest property tax rate of the 11 largest cities in the state, and the highest rate, which is Waterloo, is 116% higher than Dubuque's rate, and the average is 55% higher than Dubuque's rate. Looking at taxable value per capita comparison, Dubuque is the second lowest taxes per capita as compared to those 11 largest cities. The highest city, which is West Des Moines, is 128% higher than Dubuque, and the average is 67% higher than Dubuque. Looking at 1989 to 2026, the average homeowner has averaged an annual increase in costs in the city portion of their property taxes of 1.45%, or about $9.28 per year. If the state had been fully funding the homestead tax credit, this increase would be lower and would have averaged about $6.62 per year. Moving into the enterprise funds, in '26, the rate and fee increases by enterprise fund is shown here. Water has a recommended 9% increase, so that would be a $3.60 average monthly change. Sanitary sewer is also a 9% recommended increase, which would be a change of $4.92. Curbside collection is an increase of 5% or 86 cents per month. And then stormwater is 5% or on average 53 cents per month. So the average monthly cost would increase by $9.91. And just a reminder, the city does offer income qualified residential customers a base fee reduction for all 4 utilities up to 50% of that base fee. The water rate comparison, you can see here the highest rate city, Des Moines, is 5.2% higher than Dubuque's rate, and the average is 5.2% lower than Dubuque. The costs for lower consumption households, customers only pay for the water they use. So if the average monthly water use is 6,000 per month, but smaller households may only use 3,000 gallons. So the estimate for a lower consumption household is $29.87 or a $1.80 per month increase over 25. Sanitary sewer rate comparison, the highest city here is Des Moines, which is 6.7% higher than Dubuque's rate, and the average is 18.2% lower than Dubuque. Again, here, consumption for lower households, customers are only paying for the wastewater that they generate. So in '26, sewer cost estimate for lower consumption households is $21.29, which is a $2.47 per month increase over 2025. An annual sewer rate increase comparison, so this shows, including the recommended 9% increase for '26, Dubuque's average annual increase over the last 6 years is 4th highest, and the average for the other large cities with wastewater treatment facilities is 5.46%, which is 9% lower than Dubuque's average. Looking at a breakdown of sanitary sewer revenue by user class, residential makes up 40.9%, industrial is 36%, commercial is 21.4%, and other is 1.6%. So this is as of March 25th, 2025. Solid waste collection fee comparison, the highest city is Ames, which is 59% higher than Dubuque's rate, and the average is 19% higher than Dubuque. Stormwater fee comparison, the highest rate here is Des Moines, which is 75% higher than Dubuque's rate, and the average is 31% lower than Dubuque. Looking at strategic use of debt and general fund reserves, our statutory debt limit used for fiscal year '26 recommended is 34%. So comparing to fiscal year 15, that's a 63% decrease in the use of statutory debt limit. Total debt in millions estimated for fiscal year '26 is $289.6 million. And looking at retired debt versus new debt, the total of city indebtedness as of June 30th, '26 is projected to be $289,568,909. Again, that's 33.5% of our debt limit. And the total city indebtedness as of June 30th, 2015 was $295,561,181, and we were at 90% of statutory debt limit in 2015. We are projected to have about $8.5 million more in debt as of June 30th, 2026 as compared to 2025. This chart shows retired debt versus new debt. So retired debt is in blue, new debt is in the orangish color. There shows a spike in fiscal year '25 of new debt. We actually issued about 3 years worth of debt for projects in 2025. And in that 3-year period, the city retired $60.72 million in debt and issued $84.11 million in debt. Showing a comparison of percentage of legal debt limit utilized by the larger 11 cities in Iowa. Des Moines is at 104% higher than Dubuque, and the average is 27% higher than Dubuque. As I mentioned before, in 2015, Dubuque was at 90% of our statutory debt limit. In 26, this budget recommendation, the statutory debt limit is 33.5%. And by the end of the recommended 5-year CIP in 2030, we would be at 32.9% of our statutory debt limit. General fund reserves, Moody's Investor Service recommends a 35% general fund operating reserve for AA rated cities. In July of 23, Moody's Investor Services upgraded the city's outstanding general obligation bonds from AA3 to AA2, and also upgraded the outstanding sales tax increment revenue bonds from A2 to A1. And then at the time we issued general obligation bonds in January of 2025, Moody's affirmed our AA2 credit rating. And they commented on our local economy benefits from our role as a regional economic center with solid resident income and full value per capita. And financial operations are strong and will remain to do so despite declines in fund balance over the next few years as we spend down some of our ARPA funds. This shows our general fund reserve projections. So we're expecting to remain at about 32.2 million, which will be 37.64% of projected revenue, or 54.09% under Moody's methodology that they use. Looking at the 5-year capital improvement program, our 5-year CIP focuses on modernization, maintenance, and extension of sanitary sewer system to accommodate growth the city is currently experiencing and anticipating. In the CIP budget from January 2025 through December 2029, the city will spend over $131 million on sanitary sewer and wastewater treatment plant improvements. To accomplish this, we will issue $152.1 million in new debt. We will retire $139.5 million of existing debt, and we will be increasing our debt by $12.6 million. Again, in 26, we'll be at 33.5% of the statutory debt limit, and by the end of the 5-year CIP, we will be at 32.9%. We do use strategic use of debt for infrastructure projects. We consider the older a piece of infrastructure gets, and the more it is allowed to deteriorate, the more the costs increase. The longer the wait to invest in infrastructure, the more costs are increased by inflation. If the investment in infrastructure is not made in this interest rate environment, it will eventually need to be made when interest rates could be potentially higher and increase costs, and the massive amount of federal grant money that is being made available. The recommended 5-year CIP, the $152.1 million in new debt is made up of sanitary sewer projects of $78.4 million, Five Flags renovation, $22.9 million, water projects of $15.9 million, fire equipment and improvements at $7.1 million, Central Avenue Corridor, $16.4 million, federal building renovation, $5.6 million, parking ramp maintenance, $5.2 million, airport improvements, $2.3 million, and park development of $2.2 million. Some of our major projects included in this 5-year CIP include the Catfish Creek Sewer Shed Interceptor Sanitary Sewer Improvements, $47 million total, Water and Resource Recovery Center High Strength Waste, $6.2 million in total, Water and Resource Recovery Center Industrial Controls Update, $3 million total. Water and Resource Recovery Center BOD Capacity Upgrades, $1.1 million in total. We also have a Southwest Arterial water main extensions for $1.7 million, private lead water service line replacements, $5.7 million, source water PFAS reduction project, $9.5 million, water third pressure zone connection from Tanzanite Drive to Olympic Heights, $2 million, Cooper Boulevard sanitary sewer lift station replacement, $1.5 million of ARPA grant, total project costs, $1.5 million. B Branch gate and pump replacement, $28.2 million. Of that, $8 million is funded by US EDA grant. 14th Street overpass, $43 million total, $25 million from a raise grant, $9.2 million from DMATS, and then other support from Dubuque Racing Association. Northwest Arterial and US 20 Dodge Street intersection improvements, $17.5 million, $12 million Iowa DOT allocation, $5.5 million city contribution. Under streets, we will be doing 10 miles of asphalt overlay projects by Public Works, 14th Street overpass roundabouts and related improvements, total $43 million. Central Avenue corridor improvements, $8.2 million of $22 million total. Under improvement packages in '26, there were $2.3 million in general fund improvement requests, of which $1.7 million are reoccurring and $595,000 are non-reoccurring. There is $261,720 recommended in non-reoccurring and $661,356 in recurring improvements. And before I go to this slide, we also received notice today and that we heard that the federal government cut nearly $400 million in AmeriCorps grant funding. And so this is shuttering more than 1,000 programs and prematurely ending the service of almost 30,000 AmeriCorps members across the country. The City of Dubuque has received, as of 5:55 p.m., the official termination letter for some of our funding. For now, we have too little information to calculate how this will impact the fiscal year 2026 budget. I would encourage the mayor and city council to pass the budget as recommended. If the city council approves the budget recommendation, it will support continued investment in the people, businesses, and organizations that are making a difference in our community, and continued investment in the infrastructure that must exist for Dubuque to continue and thrive. And that's the end of the presentation.
All right, thank you very much, Jenny. Well, we are in a public hearing to discuss the amended fiscal year 2026 budget recommendation. Do we have any public input before I bring it back to the council for discussion?
Good evening. Clark Slows, 2925 Burlington Street. And basically what I'm here to comment about is, not necessarily the dollars and cents, but the process. Because for 2 years now, I've been attending, the big three taxing entities, their public hearings. And by far, the city of Dubuque is the most transparent. Doesn't surprise me, it wouldn't be the most transparent in the state. I've worked in numerous states, jurisdictions, and it's by far the most transparent. Most of the information out there, if you take the time to look for it. And the difference between last year and this year, kind of looking at public reaction, like this year on Facebook, there have been more groups, commenting on property taxes. But the one thing, Iowans for Tax Relief, how should we say, I'd say one of the most critical organizations on property taxes, say the big three here have reasonable growth in tax rate. And I agree with that. Now, do I agree with how, every single detail, how it's being spent? No, I don't. But I think it's impossible for those groups to make everybody happy. If you can do that, you shouldn't be here. You should be in Washington cleaning up that mess. The chief thing that seems to be the big thing is comparing the government, wages and benefits to the private sector. And, you kind of talk to some of the public and ask them, well, what are you comparing it to? Are you comparing like the city engineer to what job in the private sector? Are you talking about consulting engineers, like the water resource people? Are you comparing them to someone who works at McDonald's versus that same position in the private sector? You know, what is your basis for comparison? And there have been more things that you've seen on Facebook where they say, like myself, people 65 and older shouldn't have to pay property taxes because they've done their duty. And that kind of surprised me because growing up, I'm sure, you know, during my youth, there have been people over 65 who have paid property taxes. You know, if we're not going to pay property taxes once we hit 65, we have now just raised everybody else's property taxes substantially. You also had empty nesters saying we shouldn't have to pay property taxes for the schools. Well, I think all of us who went through the school system here, K through 12, can probably think of somebody who was 65 and older and help pay property taxes to get them through school. The thing is nobody likes to pay property taxes. It's not my favorite thing to do. There's something I'd rather be doing, and I know all of you would rather do something else other than pay property taxes. You sit on both sides of the table, the property taxpayer side and, you know, the city side. There was a time where I had both those roles. Now that I'm retired, I'm mostly on the property taxpayer side. I think it's a fair system. Am I going to continue to watch what goes on? Sure. I'm a numbers guy. How should we say? My second Christmas season is now when all that information comes out March through April. My wife just looks at me and shakes my head. And I'm going, I'm a numbers guy. It's great. There's more information than you can shake a stick at. Very transparent. When I've sent emails to the staff, they've gotten back to me quickly. Well, last Monday during the public hearing, I think Mike sent me an email before I could even get back to my seat with the information. So tonight, Mike, if you're going to send me something, at least let me get back to my seat first. So, and the only other thing I'd sit there and say is give the engineering department their own night and not be last one to go. Because next year, I think I might have to take a couple of Red Bulls to prepare for that. So, I mean, that's all I got. I think it's fair and reasonable. I know there are going to be some taxpayers out there. I'm not going to make their Christmas card list. So be it. Thank you.
Thank you, Clark, for your comments. Other public input this evening? Accept any. Okay. Any virtual public input?
We do have written input that was received. Clark Schultz did submit written input, as well as John Klosterman of 1755 Bristol Drive. And then we did have written input submitted through the city's online budgeting form. So I'll just read the names and addresses of those who submitted input. Tammy Worsfon, 1695 Avoca Street. Mark Onkin, 2142 Sipel Road. Chris Miller, 2273 Southway Drive. Emma Chambers, 940 Kelly Lane. Jennifer Chambers, 940 Kelly Lane. Heather Rath, 15350 Woodvale Court. Natalie Nembers, 1290 Arrowhead Drive. Jennifer Nielsen, 200 Fremont Ave. Jenny Borman, 1595 Kane. Blaine Nielsen, 200 Fremont Ave. Kim Finn, 1490 Kaufman Ave. Jeff Ronick, 15618 White Oak Drive. Kelly King, 11123 Hidden Springs Court. Kelly Lem, 2489 Hesedena Drive. Susan Cano, 82 Nevada Street. Amanda Saylor, 2450 University Ave. Mark Mattel, 2059 Golden Eagle Drive. And Jacob Mosina, 900 Jackson Street.
All right, thank you, Adrian. Anybody else, Corey? All right. All right, last call for public input before I bring it back here. Okay. All right, well, I know this is traditionally a night where we all have a few things to say. We actually have a little bit of work to do yet to make sure that we agree on recommendations, and I have some comments about that actually. So I'm going to just say a few things here first. So I appreciate everyone's patience and allowing us to talk maybe a little longer than usual for a night like this. When it comes to the budget, we want to make sure that we have the opportunity to be able to say what we really need to say. So this has probably been the most unique budget experience that I've been through since I've been on the city council. And it's been for a couple of reasons. First, I'm going to talk about the good ones. So This is actually, and maybe I'm wrong, but in my estimation, I think we received more public input during the budget process this year than I can recall ever receiving before, both in person and in writing, and even just while we were out and about doing things. I mean, during the budget process, the word was out that we were talking about these things, and people came and talked to us. That makes budgeting so much more effective when we're talking about a city. We have to work together to do those things, and I really appreciated it. And I think I can speak for the council in saying that too, that we really did appreciate it. I heard a couple of things very, very clearly. These are the things that stuck out to me at least. One, we definitely heard about parks. And our placement of parks on the high priority list was clearly appropriate. So I think that that's a good thing that we were hearing a lot of that. We received the most written and spoken public input, I think, about parks in general. And I do think we need to continue to address this and parks maintenance in particular in the years ahead, especially at Eagle Point Park and Flora Park. We heard a lot about those two. So I want to make sure that we keep that in mind as we go forward. The other thing we heard a lot about was sewers. I called last week Sewer Week. I mean, we basically talked about sewers all week long. You didn't think that would be so exciting and things that we'd have to talk about, but it is. And, you know, it's one of those things that's interesting. While a lot of the challenges that we are facing when it comes to sewers aren't directly affecting most of the residents of the city, I mean, it doesn't affect our day-to-day life, it is affecting several development projects pretty specifically, and it does need our attention, and we're giving it to it. But it's one of those things that we definitely heard a lot about and appreciated all that discussion. The other thing that I think made this a significantly unique process was just the sheer amount of historic and I would say unprecedented uncertainty that is coming from other levels of government. This is going to be a serious challenge. I'll start with state government. You know, I appreciate the state legislature in particular and our governor being open to conversation about the things that we need here in Dubuque. I think we've been at the table in that discussion, and I appreciate that. We still don't know, though, what's going to happen with something like property tax legislation. And that's problematic because it's a huge deal for local governments. I mean, it's a major thing. If we're going to have caps or changes to our tax increment financing system and things like that, not knowing about that and then maybe being hit with that potentially next year, that's an unprecedented challenge. I mean, I don't really want to openly talk about the things that could mean because I don't want to guess, but I worry a lot about it. I'm worried about it. And I hope that we can continue to be at the table and have some serious discussions with our legislators. And, you know, I appreciate those relationships we've formed. At the federal government, I'm as disappointed as I've been yet about this AmeriCorps thing. You know, AmeriCorps was created back at probably the last true bipartisan moment in the United States government's history in our lifetime so far. And that true bipartisan moment came during the Clinton administration early on with the basically what was seen as welfare reform. So there were a lot of things that changed. But one of the really good things that came out of that moment was AmeriCorps. It's based on the Peace Corps that was created the idea was conceived really during the John F. Kennedy administration. And think about what the Peace Corps was. I mean, you go out into the world and you talk about democracy, you talk about service, you live somewhere else, you learn other cultures, you learn about people. You made the world smaller by bringing us together. That's what AmeriCorps did and does here on the local level. It's about feeding kids. It's about giving kids things to do. It's about helping children who are in difficult positions in life for various different circumstances to be able to have something that keeps them off the streets and out of trouble and all those things that we want our kids to be doing. And we're just going to lose it all. I've just never been more disappointed, honestly, in a decision. It's really unfortunate. And I'm using really nice words to say that. Because it's just, it's going to impact us greatly. And if you don't know how, you're going to find out. You're going to find out very soon how big this is going to be. This is summer programming. This is kids programming. This is recreation. This is feeding children in the Dubuque community. That's what this is. And we're going to lose it. And we're going to have to figure out how to do it. And we're not going to be able to. as a city government. We're not going to have the infrastructure from a staffing standpoint to do that any longer. You're going to wake up in a community where somebody else is going to have to step up and do these things, or it's just not getting done. I'm incredibly disappointed by it. I'm really disappointed that we're finding out an hour before this. I mean, nobody can control that timing, but it makes the uncertainty of this budget, I think, even more challenging. So thank you for allowing me to take a few moments there. I'm going to take a few more because I do have a few more things to say. I'm going to turn the page here. I'm going to get a little more sunny, so just stay with me for a second. Before I do that, though, I do want to say that I know the challenges right now are many, and I'm feeling it more in the community. You know, when I go out and talk to people, I've kind of been joking lately, and it's only been like half joking, that it seems like everybody's a little bit upset. And I think I might be right about that. I think we're feeling really stressed out. I think in general, there's a higher level of stress. That stress at times turns into fear, and that fear at times turns into mistrust, and that's when it starts to get really concerning. There is some anger, I think. People are a little more on edge. And at times, I think it's really hurting our ability to communicate effectively with one another across the community. And I think what I would ask in that is that we recognize that and try to continue to work on getting ourselves back into a calm state where we can work together. And the reason I want to say that is because there is so much good stuff happening in this town. We just had JDIF here this week, so the June Dubuque International Film Festival. It is my favorite week of the year, I think. It beats Christmas and Thanksgiving and stuff like that, and here's why. When people come to JDIF from all over the world and they come to town for like a week, I mean, they embed themselves in Dubuque for a week and they hang out. Now, they're at a very specific event, but they do get out and about and they see a lot of different things. And I consistently hear a very similar message from people who attend that conference. They come and they use words like, Dubuque is so safe, it's so clean, it's so welcoming. People are so nice and kind, and it's fun. And of course, they talk a lot about how much we support the arts and all those kinds of things. It's so interesting to hear perspectives from other people when they come and spend real time in Dubuque, when we are like really in the weeds all the time. It's great to hear the good things that are going on, because I got to hear a lot of that this week. And it really brings my mood up, until like an hour ago, really brings my mood up overall about all the things that are going on here. So I'm gonna just quickly list things that are going very well. And I'm gonna use our goals and priorities as the list to do that with. So these are things that we're kicking butt on. Air service, Todd, I see you. Morning flights. Just got them last week. We've been working so hard on this, and we just got them. Morning and evening flights. This is going to be a game changer for us. Street maintenance. I think it was over 40 miles, something like that in the last few years. 10 miles this year we get to do. So we got some of the best streets in the state. Drive somewhere else and then drive back into town. You're like, ooh, why can't I hear the cars rumbling anymore? Chaplain Schmidt Island development. So much progress, it's almost too much to list right here, but things like Island Social, Hotel, Amphitheater, new casino, new trails, more stuff to come. We got a RAISE grant, $25 million to build a bridge over a railroad. That's gonna be a really important thing, because otherwise we're sitting at that railroad for hours and hours and hours coming up in the next few years. Central Avenue revitalization, moving forward, budgeting is beginning there. Catfish Creek Sanitary Sewer Shed, $131 million budgeted, significant work already underway. Parks maintenance, we're addressing this, and we're gonna have a little bit more of a discussion about this tonight, but we are putting that forward and we're moving forward with it. We have some older goals that we've been doing really well on, significant and notable accomplishments here. Housing, childcare, pool and recreation staffing, equitable poverty prevention plan implementation, B Branch detention basin pump replacement, we've got that plan, it's going in. IT and network security, I found that on our goals and priority list a few years ago. We've talked a lot about it, got to hear about how well we're doing there. Broadband expansion. Almost everybody in town is gonna have access to fiber in like the next couple of months. Five Flags renovation. And of course, significant investment in public servants who serve this city. We have police and fire wage increases, fire department's at full staffing and is working on a station location study. Police department is restructuring to better address community needs and staffing challenges, and work throughout the entire city organization. We're working throughout the entire city organization to increase wages and improve policies and procedures and further improve the already professional culture that exists within the city of Dubuque. We have to recognize these things and recognize how well we are doing, because we are. We're doing very, very well. We have some challenges and we need to keep going on them, but we're doing very, very well. So So that brings me to the budget before us tonight, and I'm going to mention one thing, and then I'm going to open it up to the rest of us to be able to have some discussion and make any statements that you'd like to make. So we have a proposal in front of us from the city manager that addresses a few things. One, the city manager and staff, I should say. It addresses some things we held, the park maintenance position, the airport marketing funding. We have some things that were inserted by staff that are necessary that we have to do. So the TAP funding that has to do with our work with DMATs, Linwood Cemetery funding, we need that. And then we also had the water tower that was added in there. And then there's several different suggestions for how we can get there. One thing I agree with is, while it hurts, is moving the Growing Sustainable Communities Conference to every other year. I called the city manager about this and I asked a little bit about it, and understand that it's been a bit of a discussion point for a while anyway about the work that goes into this and what we need to do with that. And I understand that that can be a real challenge, so I agree with doing that. I'm going to say right now, though, I have serious concerns with not filling the Director of Strategic Partnerships position until January 1st. And it's because of everything I started this statement with. I myself have given significant time to working with the Iowa legislative issues this year. I don't mind doing it. I appreciate serving in this role. It is definitely not sustainable, though, to put us as elected officials in that role and have the primary purpose for doing that and then divvy it up among the other staff members. This is a position that needs to be, I think it needs to be funded, and I think it needs to be filled right away at the beginning of the fiscal year. That is my perspective. I'd like to be able to discuss some ways we might be able to pull that off. So I know that it's going to lead to some discussion of, first of all, whether you agree with me or not, but then also if you do, how we can do that. And I'd like to engage in that discussion tonight. Thank you very much for letting me take a few extra minutes there to say a few things. So I'll open it up to the rest of us to have some
I
discussion.
may have the honor.
Sure, Ms. Farber.
Okay. And then the question I have is, we will talk about strategic partnership later, or the proposed later? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so, and thank you very much for your unique comments and for your wonderful list of accomplishments, because based on our last few sessions here, I am a firm believer, and people know this frequently, that I'm always saying that the city's best assets are our people. And a prime example is this budget recommendation that we have before us. And I just want to give a shout out to city staff, the first responders, and our residents for the outstanding engagement during this budget process. I applaud very much the departmental reviews. It really provided, I think, the opportunity to meet all of the hardworking department team members and to learn about all the projects underway, which are vast. And what's important, I think, is the collegiality and the interdependence of the various departments, because it's a whole network that we all work together in, and I appreciate the focus, and I think that the 24/7 dedication in creating places where residents can live, work, and play safely is extremely important. I also applaud the careful and the prudent, very, very prudent budget management, so thank you, Jenny and staff, Mike and staff. And I realize that addressing pocketbook issues is very challenging, and so thank you very much for the heavy lift. I also want to give a special thanks to the residents for their input and feedback, and the impetus, as the mayor just said, for updating some of the recommendations for funding, such as the airport marketing, the Eagle Point Park maintenance, and the water tower. And as a tennis player, former coach, former instructor, I have to give a shout out regarding the parks to the dozen of residents who really sent input about the distressed nature and safety of our tennis courts. And this is duly noted, and I plan to hopefully further address this in our goal setting, as the mayor had said, similar to both Flora and to Eagle Point Park. And I would be very remiss if I didn't mention once again the role of the IT departments within our city. And as the saying goes, if you build it, IT meaning for information technology, they will come. And as mentioned previously, the new state-of-art data center will host numerous smart applications and software to the benefit of all the city departments. And our data center is very unique for a city our size, and indeed, if you build it, they will come, because other municipalities and businesses are already commenting and requesting information to come visit, and actually, they do admire our new innovative model. So bravo to Chris and to Mr. Pregler and to the team, just really an outstanding job. So it is with very much great appreciation and for the uniqueness, if you will, to the staff members for all that you do, and we are so fortunate, I think, to have the hardworking staff and the first responder teams, and because of your work, we all can sleep better at night. So thank you, and kudos to everyone. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Farber. Mr. Resnick.
Yes, I have a couple questions, if you wouldn't mind, Ms. Larson. So do we generally have about 2/3 of the budget operating and 1/3 capital budget? Is that pretty typical? Is that on purpose, or is that, that's how it is tonight?
Correct. So it will fluctuate, so the capital budget portion will fluctuate depending on projects submitted by departments. So, for example, when the B branch project was going on, the capital budget was much, much larger than what you're seeing here for '26, because it was a much larger project. But I would say the amount that you're seeing tonight is about average.
It's a 5-year capital budget, so if it wasn't used on the particular projects that are destined to be done, it'd be spent on some other projects, because we have a lot of work to do in these capital, in
Correct.
that area, correct?
Yep.
And you said, as far as utilities, you only pay for what you use. And there is a minimum fee, isn't there? I mean, there is a water minimum fee. So I'm not sure if that's pretty close. Maybe say there's a correlation between usage and fee. The more you use, the more you pay. Now, that's true. Anyway, that's just me. So those are the couple that question, and then I'm gonna just talk about some things. So thank you very much. So I've always talked about financial strength with the city, and I've always based on the determination of financial strength to be, do we have the low or lowest tax rate? Do we have lower debt? And do we have healthy reserves? Those are the three things, to me, indicate that we have financial strength. And then, of course, we're backed up by Moody's. And that is the case. We do have even the lowest tax rate of, in Iowa, that's we have to compare ourselves to, lower debt and healthy reserves. So I think that's a good thing that we're doing. As far as the utilities and the rate hikes, the rate hikes pay for new construction as well as required maintenance. And Dubuque is in a growth mode. Now, we should be happy about that. For a city, if it's not growing, it's dying, and we are growing. A lot of good projects are coming. So it does cost money to grow, and we will be able to use the fact that we're growing to keep Dubuque a strong city for generations to come. And that's the other thing we're thinking about in council goals and priorities. It's not just what has to happen for the people who live here now, but we're also thinking about what will make this a great community when we're long gone. And it will be a community. Is it a great community? Well, we are standing on the shoulders of a lot of people who have worked very hard to make Dubuque great. And hopefully, they're going to forget our names in a few years, but they'll still either enjoy Dubuque or not. So we hope we keep this place growing. The other thing, I'd mentioned debt before, and a phrase that I recently heard, and I agree with, is deferred maintenance is debt. So, I mean, we would not, I don't want to pay for things that you don't, there's not a buzz about. It's just getting things done that have to be done. But we have to follow through on required maintenance. So I understand that we're building and we're maintaining these very important things that have to be done. So I would just like to say I'm going to stay open-minded for the further discussions that the mayor talked about. One of the requirements of being on the council is to have you a viewpoint and then also have an open mind. So most of our operating budget, more than 50%, goes to police, fire, public works. And I think every citizen will agree that we have a great police force, great fire department, and some great public works getting things done in the city. And then 1/3 of the budget is capital, the capital spending, and that's mostly for infrastructure and to keep this place going and thriving. So, we have financial strength. We're very fortunate to do so because that is the basis for all the good things that we can do for the citizens. So I appreciate, as mentioned by comments earlier, of all the input, because that's who we're serving, the citizens of Dubuque. And I look forward to further discussions tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Ms. Rousseau.
Thank you. There were several key themes in this budget that were important to me, and one was the public input. And I'm really pleased that we were able to react to many of the things we heard and to try and fit in some of the items, such as the Eagle Point Park maintenance technician and the water tower removal, or even just to think about those items for our next goal-setting session. So we really had the opportunity to listen to our residents. I also think the focus on infrastructure is really important. I think this budget reflects our council goals, and it's based on those basic needs and services that our residents expect, like keeping up on our road maintenance and maintaining the assets that serve our residents and help our community thrive. Safety is also a priority in this budget, and what I liked in the presentations was not just about the great police and fire that we have, but every single department showing us how they work to make Dubuque a safe community for all of us. And I'm sure we all want to live in a safe community. And the last theme that was really important to me was our people. We want and we have the best people to serve our residents. And now we want to make sure that they're fairly compensated. So our compensation and classification study compared our jobs, not only in the public sector, but in the private sector where appropriate. So we aren't trying to be the highest paid employer, but we want to provide competitive wages so we can attract and retain those great people. So I appreciated all the detail and the transparency that goes into this process. And I acknowledge the many challenges that come our way from the state and federal government, sometimes on a daily basis. And we have worked so hard to respond to those challenges as best we can. So all of that being said, I'm looking forward to a little further more discussion on what the mayor has brought up for this evening. So thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Rousseau. Yeah, Mr. Spank.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to start with thanking our staff for all the work and the many sleepless nights you've worked on the budget. I mean, I greatly appreciate all the work that goes into the process because there's more behind the scene work that we don't see that just makes it happen. So thank you. And then also thank you to our citizens for reaching out during the budget process. Your input helps myself make all these important decisions, and I'm mainly referring to the multiple citizens that came and asked questions and requests of funding for Eagle Point Park. We know the park needs a lot of work, so thank you. And hopefully this will result in the tentative approval of additional funds for staff and the removal of the unused water tower. I want to keep stressing your voice matters. Please continue to reach out to all of us on City Council on anything regarding Eagle Point Park and any other issues. Regarding the infrastructure issue, I keep looking at our city. I feel like our city was built out to like around the 70s and then stopped. And then we couldn't keep up with it. And then things went sideways and it just took a long time to get to where we got to. And now we have to fix the very old infrastructure. I myself have a very old house that I'm forever investing into. I think my husband and I added it up one time. We have nearly put back in what the cost of what we bought on the house. So that's just an old facility. And unfortunately, water and sewer are not sexy, glamorous things that everybody likes to look at. They are just infrastructure that just cost a fortune. And we've gotten to this point, and this is where we're at. And I'm not happy that it's gotten to this situation. I do know that I'm appreciative that that we're looking at a longer range plan as to what we need to do, because we have to think of these things longer. So I'm looking forward to also hearing what the mayor has about his idea for that strategic partnership. I'm intrigued to hear what those are. So thank you.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Sprague. Yeah, Ms. Weffel.
So last year, in our final night of budget, went through all of the budget packets and picked out the things that I felt either that I was hopeful we could fund in the future, or what really stuck with me based on staff statements. So I'm going to go through date and which budget packet it was, and to my colleagues, this is what I'll probably talk about at goal setting a little bit in these themes. So on April 2nd, package 1, the city attorney's office, 1 of 1 requesting a full-time assistant city attorney, really with the idea that this would be planning for our future strategically of succession planning in that department. April 9th, packet 4, parks. I'm very grateful that we held 3 of 7, the maintenance technician, and now are approving that, I hope. But also 2 of 7 that night was a full-time forestry technician. So with the number of trees that I hope we will plant, thank you to, of course, Councilmember Roussel, but all of our team that worked on that grant. Now we have to execute it. And not only do we execute it, but then we have to take care of those trees. And so looking forward into a forestry technician to assist in that also reflects upon our parks and the future of our parks. April 9th, also packet 4, conference center, 1 of 1, phase 1 security camera implementation. Honestly, that came before us last year. We didn't do it. This year it came before us again. We didn't do it. I think that it is protecting our assets of our facility, and I think it's for the safety of the patrons, and we should consider that in the future. We didn't dive deep into sports facility infrastructure, but based on our sports facility analysis and conversations in the community, I know that a sports complex is needed in our community. Additionally, specifically, a second sheet of ice for our ice arena. Based on that facilities study, there was good data that talked about the financial feasibility of that and return on that. And so I think we should continue to discuss that at goal setting. April 10th, packet 5, emergency management. One thing that was said to us was that one of the most important things we could do as a council is to invest in continued infrastructure for safety, specifically as it relates to climate. And it was pointed out the B branch, and what an incredible opportunity that was to prevent hundreds of homes from flooding, and will help families in the future for decades, if not longer. I think that remarked on me that infrastructure is a priority, as we've discussed. Police. So we have currently, I believe we had documented 14 vacancies, but that is after we recently transitioned our force number from 115 to 109 when we created our precision policing force. And so we cannot take our eye off the ball. We have not achieved that goal. We have had that goal for 2 years, and we must continue to work on that goal. I am really looking forward to, as part of that, the information that we will hopefully bring back from the facilities enhancement work that our force is doing, and whatever they see a need for in the future, I look forward to hearing more about it so that I can learn more about it so that we can execute it. And I do not want us to take our eye off the goal of a 30% by 2030 female force. Fire. That same night, look forward to location study results, but goal of 4 firefighters per vehicle. I would really appreciate in the years to come that we come up with a long-term plan, 5 to 10 years. How can we get to a goal of 4 firefighters per vehicle long-term? And so not just investing in our facilities. If those facilities are not well-staffed to achieve the best outcomes long-term, we need to look at that not just in facilities, but in people. Finally, I'm grateful to my colleagues to do this work with you. We each have a unique life experience and stage in life and professional background, and each of you offers something very powerful to me and to our community. I'm grateful to the public servants that have served our residents. Many of you are here tonight, but so many have served throughout the city and been here during our budget hearings. You all very much inspire me to do my part in this work, and we are so fortunate to have each and every one of you. I want to draw special attention to Corey, to Adrian, to our finance department for all of the hours that you've spent here in these chambers with us during this budget season. And additionally, I want to say a special thanks to our police force, who is here every night to make sure that we have a safe space for ourselves and for everyone that wants to come and be part of this process. Gratitude also for Ward 4 residents for the privilege to serve you in this way. I can't express my love for the city, for her people, and for this office. Right before coming, read how thousands of children in Dubuque will not get breakfast and lunches this summer. Funding in our city will not get easier, and in the short term, this work and decisions will get harder. But I will not give up, and I know that we will do this work together, both our residents, our staff, and my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wethel. Mr. Jones.
Mr. Mayor, at one of the many ribbon cuttings for the America's River Project quite a few years ago, Senator Grassley was introduced and he got up and said, well, just about everything's been said, but not by me. So that's where I'm at now. Wonderful comments from all of you, and I agree with everything, single thing that you said. I did hear today by anonymous letter that some city employees feel blamed for the tax increase. Don't feel blamed, for God's sake. You're looking at a city council that was willing to raise taxes a little bit to make sure that you're adequately compensated. There's no blame. We're moving in the right direction there. We're moving in the right direction on a lot of things. Took some heat today because I made the comment that it matters less how we got here than where we're going with our sewer system. That's still true. But how we got here was by working on the sewer system for decades to try and get it, to try and stay ahead. And we were outdeveloped. And we were slowed down dramatically by two events that were completely beyond our control. One, an archaeological investigation before we could proceed that cost a couple of years, and COVID, which kind of shut down the whole world, which cost us another year and a half. But for those two events, as the mayor's pointed out, we'd be doing fine. We'd be plugging everybody in. We'd be going forward. And we'd still be spending millions of dollars on enhancing that system. We've come so far in building up our fire department, building up our police department, not so much on the workforce, but on the rest of it over the decades that I've been here and that the city's been here. We've done a great job. We were late to the party with the AmeriCorps. We didn't start using it until fairly recently, and what a terrible shame that it's going away. It kind of makes me speechless too. It was such a great program, such a great opportunity for young people to engage with the world and learn about the troubles that other people have and be part of the solution on their way to bigger and better things in life. And to imagine that all gone is just unimaginable. This country used to be about building each other up and helping each other out and getting better outcomes for everybody. So we've got a budget proposal before us that solves most of the problems that are within reach. But it's always incremental. It's always slower than you want it to be. And it's necessarily so because you have to get back to the source of the funds is the taxpayer that's already stressed, that's already having their own problems, that the issues that are coming our way from federal and state government are also coming their way and causing them other issues in life. So we try to be moderate, we try to be fair. We've been listening a lot, we've been hearing a lot this session, and I really appreciate that. So how do we get to the finish line? I completely agree that this is the worst time in the world to be without a government affairs coordinator. That's probably something that we need to find a way to fix. One way we could fix it, and I would never propose this in the course of ordinary budgeting, because this is a recurring cost to have that position filled, but it's already a recurring cost. We're just talking about a deferred hire. Maybe we could not do something in the CIP side to grab a chunk of funds, delay the purchase of a piece of equipment or something to fund that position fully this one time, because it's already a recurring position that's going to have to be funded in the future. We know that it's not going to tip the scales of the future like that type of proposal normally would. But that's one possible answer to get us down the road here. I think we have to find an answer tonight, and I think it's going to hurt someplace else, but that's the way it is. That's how the scales work. So that's what I've got. Thank you, everybody, for your hard work. We're almost 50 hours into public open meetings discussing goals and priorities, budget, and more budget, and giving all the departments an opportunity to tell their stories of what they're trying to do, what they need to accomplish it, and what's working for them and what's not. Clark, you used the term at the beginning of this, the whole story, that people don't see the whole story. Well, I'll tell you what, you and I saw the whole story. We sat here and lived through the whole story over the last several weeks, and Dubuquers had every opportunity to see the whole story. And it's all on video, it's all archived, you can go look it up, you can look up the agenda and click to the parts you're interested in. You don't have to sit through hours and hours of it to understand what's happened here. But a lot has happened here in those 50-some hours that got us to this point tonight. So I'm proud to support this budget. I hope we can fix the outstanding issue.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, Ms. Farber.
Yeah, so I have 2 points. One is just for educational purposes. I just went back to the AmeriCorps information that was sent to us, and the fiscal year donation from the government was $362,250, which we are now not going to receive. The local match, however, was $175,300. And that came from, I think, 2 or 3 sources, if you recall, Jennifer, just to keep me on track here. And then you had mentioned previously about unbudgeted, the interest earnings that we had, and that was going to help fulfill some of the 5 items that the mayor had mentioned that were on the new budget recommendation. Do we have any other unbudgeted interest earnings that might come into play here as we're looking to perhaps expand this list?
So as far as the one-time interest revenue that was received from Dubuque Bank and Trust, so some of that has been allocated to other projects in 2025 that are happening. I guess I'm kind of leaning towards maybe having the city manager speak on, other intents of the funds, but it could be a possibility. But again, as was mentioned, I struggle a little bit because we're talking about funding a position, and of course, it's just going to make budgeting in 2027 harder when we're allocating non-recurring funds to the position. But I don't know if the city manager wants to make a comment.
No, I understand that, but I just was curious about that.
If I could make a comment.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Thank you. City Manager Mike Van Milligan. So what we normally do in a budget year is there's a lot of give and take during the year. After you adopt a budget, some things come in over budget, some things come under budget, some revenue sources come in higher than expected, some come in lower than expected, because of course it's all projection. And so what we normally do is when the budget year closes out, so when we hit June 30th of 2025, we'll close out the budget. And by August, Jennifer Larson, the Chief Financial Officer, will have worked with her staff to do all the analysis and say, okay, here's how we finished out the budget year. And every single year, we finish to the positive. And that's by design, because while we do some budget amendments during the year to cover some of the expenses that were unanticipated, we only do that based on the knowledge that we have money to pay for it. And so we've never ended up a budget year in a deficit situation. And so the idea that we could identify one source of revenue this fiscal year, which came in, quite frankly, extraordinarily high. And that was the interest from our banking services. And that's because we did an RFP during the year. And when the council awarded that, it brought in several $1 million above what we had originally anticipated during the year. It was a big, big win for the city. As I said, normally what we would do is we would close out June 30th of this year, close out the books, and then say, good news, this is how much money we have to the positive that we didn't expect. Now, what would we normally do with that money? We normally would take that money and plow it into the next budget year cycle. So when departments were saying, hey, I need to do this capital project or that capital project, we'd have money to do them. And then some of the recommendations that you see in this year's budget would be money left over from last year's budget. But that doesn't mean that's an absolute rule. And I will say that this year, because we got one extraordinary influx of dollars, of unbudgeted dollars through the banking services agreement, I think it creates an opportunity to maybe be a little more flexible. And I hope I'm not getting too much out in front of this, Mayor, because I know you said you wanted to talk about the Director of Strategic Partnerships position. But what I would ask the council to consider doing is approve the budget as we recommended it, which means the Director of Strategic Partnerships would not start till January 1st. However, with the direction that if in August, when we close out the books, if we have money to the positive, that we take that money, some of that money, and accelerate that position to fill it as quickly as possible. So it wouldn't be July 1st, but it probably could be in the area of September 1st, but it wouldn't be January 1st. And I have to admit, I have a high level of confidence we're going to finish out the fiscal year in a positive position. First of all, because we do every year, because we watch it very closely. But this year, because we had this extraordinary influx of unbudgeted dollars. So I don't know if that answers your question. And if it doesn't, I'd be happy to try and answer it better than that.
Well, thank you, Mike. And then we still have the services of Terry Goodman, don't we, until the end of the year?
Yeah, so actually, in the current year budget and in next year's budget is the contract with Terry Goodman's, because when she retired, she started a consulting firm on strategic partnerships. But what the city did is we contracted with Terry for our relationships with the federal government. We did not contract with her for our relationships with state government. And so we'll continue to receive her services next year. But the reason I recommended that and remember, when she retired, there was a part-time position that she was in. And so that part-time position could still exist next year with her contract. But I just know it'd be almost impossible to fill a part-time position and get the talent we need to do the services we need at both the federal and state level. Now, supplementing Terry's work at the federal level, but supplementing your work as council members. And as the mayor said, he's been spending a lot of his time doing it at the state level. So that's why I recommended we take the part-time strategic partnership position from this year and make it a full-time position. And we identified how to pay for it 100%. We eliminated another position in the city manager's office that was vacant, and we did some other movements to be able to pay for it. And so I still stand by my recommendation that next year we should recruit a full-time director of strategic partnerships who would concentrate on our state relationships and on partnering with Terry as a contract services person on our federal strategic partnerships. And the other thing is strategic partnerships are bigger than the federal and state government. We partner with local organizations. We partner with not for foundations outside of Dubuque. So it's bigger picture than government. But so that's the recommendation.
Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. So I hear what you're saying, Mike, and I appreciate your high level of confidence. I think what concerns me the most is the fact that, you know, even with the services of Terry Goodman, I think the scope of the work that is required all year long for the Director of Strategic Partnerships position is vast. And and we're talking about grant tracking and applying for those grants, legislative tracking, building the relationships that we need, keeping Dubuque at the table in all the discussions that are going on. I mean, I just, you know, I get it. And I don't think if we were to vote on this as it is, I would vote for it. But it makes me really uncomfortable. I'm going to be honest, because I'm watching the speed at which things are flying especially in particular the federal and state government. And it concerns me that we don't have full-time eyes on that in the way that I think Dubuque really needs and deserves. And I worry that I don't like the idea of giving it up to chance. I don't have any good ideas. I'll be honest with you. I don't have this brilliant idea of what we can do aside from not doing what we are asking to do here. I mean, my math, if it's correct, it's around $77,000 that we're pulling from the finance people. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I'm never confident in my math when I do that, but it worked out that time. So, I think that amount is difficult to get from what we have before us here. Even if you take, for instance, the 2 improvement packages that we held, it doesn't get to that total. And I totally understand the concerns about using, like CIP funds, for example, one-time funds for a recurring position. We don't like to do that. It's not very responsible either. So I'm just blabbering at this point. I don't know if anybody else has any better ideas. Yeah, Mr. Resnick.
Oh, I don't know what better ideas you threw there, right there at the end.
Right at the end, sorry.
But I did want to say that I hope that we don't use the $175,000 match meant for the AmeriCorps, because reversals are common, and there may be, lawsuits and other type of things, and it's not uncommon. I just don't want this to come back and say, oh, you could have done it if you had that, match reserve, match saved. So I hope that we continue to save that match money, and hopefully that decision will be reversed. And I also have to say that I appreciate Mr. Van Milligan and his staff with the amended budget recommendation, very nimble. It's changed very quickly, and I think very responsibly. I do feel that Mr. Van Milligan has a very good feel for how the flow is and what is necessary. I'm frustrated that the partnerships folks are having a lot of frustrating times trying to do. Mr. Mayor, you're having very frustrating times, people listening and seeming to understand, but it really doesn't change the situation much for the citizens of Dubuque, which is frustrating. So I would like to hear other suggestions. I think that Ms. Wethel had a lot of good ideas that can come forward at the goals and priorities, and we can talk through that. So that's my 2 cents. I wouldn't say they're better ideas, but they're at least worth 2 cents. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Resnick. Ms. Russell, go ahead.
I like the idea that Mr. Van Milligan has shared with us, that it's very possible that the delay for this Director of Strategic Partnerships may not be till January, but instead may come much sooner with funding once we close out the books for the year end. And that approach sounds like a good idea for me. That's my opinion. Thanks.
Thanks, Ms. Russell. Any others? Ms. Wethel, go ahead.
Did you have anything specific in the budget that you saw that spoke to you as something that we might defer or, I know in the past, when I brought things forward that were not recommended as funded, my whole goal was to try and find things within the budget. I don't make friends when I do that. But when we try and find, if we're going to add something, to find something to take away would be our common process that we've practiced since I've been on council. I did mention, and I'll recirculate it, even though it was not held for further discussion, the meeting number 1, Human Resources 2 of 8, page 4 of 22, the 25,000 additional to the 25,000 we already spend on tuition reimbursement program. And really, that's only a piece of this, I understand. But as we start to look at specific things to revisit, my concerns with that was that we've already made very significant efforts in increasing pay for our employees. That money serves only a couple handfuls of employees, and so it's not equitably spent throughout the organization. And in addition, there's no requirement for those employees to stay with us to serve additional time if we reimburse their studies. And so I understand tuition reimbursement is, as we discussed, something that's really important for the people that utilize it, but it's not utilized by all our employees, and we have focused very strategically on wage enhancement. So there was already $25,000 that we funded in the past for that. We're talking about adding an additional $25,000. Just in reviewing that as one opportunity for consideration as we look for where that money would come from.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
for that. Yeah, Ms. Farber.
Yeah, so I also support Mike's recommendation, and I just want to comment, Katie, about the pilot program that you had talked about, and it is a pilot program, and I think we witnessed a few people who came and actually stood and spoke with us about how much it had impacted their professional background and had helped them actually move up and move across within the organization. So I very much support that pilot program, and I think it's important to reimburse for that tuition. And we've already voted on it, or we've already talked about that. We did not set it aside. But I just think that's just an enormous benefit for these folks.
Well, and totally agree. It is a pilot, but it is a recurrent fund.
Okay, anyway, I just wanted to share my thought.
You bet.
Yep, thank you.
So I think at this point, I mean, I'm kind of hearing from the council that, you know, if we were to move forward with this vote, it sounds to me like people are going to vote for it, as is, in the way we are. And, you know, at this point, I'm not happy with this part of it, but I am happy with the rest of the budget. I feel confident that we've done a good job here. We've clearly spent enough time talking about it and being open about all the things that we need to do. I think as we move forward, I think I've made my point, you know, in that this is really, really important. I think that's the point that I'm trying to really get home here. I was just, it was a struggle for me when I read that this was the idea for how we could get those other improvement packages that we want to get on there, because this is the one thing that I was really looking forward to the most, I think, in our positions, is to be able to get this person on board and really start to move and get, you know, chugging back along the way that we've been able to do in the years before. But at the same time, there isn't anybody in this position. I would hate to have to pull from another position, for example, that there is a person already there to be able to fund this one. I want to avoid that at all costs. So I understand that this is probably the best idea that I think we have. I mean, I'm racking my brain for other things, and it basically just means taking things that we've already approved and not really discussed, and that is it. I think that bothers me even more. So I do appreciate this discussion. Mike, I appreciate the further context. And Jenny, your context as well, you know, the warnings that we always receive about not spending non-recurring dollars on recurring things. I think it's responsible, and it's a good reminder. So at this point, I'm willing to vote and willing to move forward and go ahead and approve this budget so that we can get things going with the sincere hope that we can fast track the Director of Strategic Partnerships position as much as possible in the months ahead. And I would say well before the next legislative session starts in the beginning of January. I think that's a really important point. I think it has to try to be before the legislative session starts so that we can get somebody really, involved in that process because obviously there's a lot that happens once January starts hitting. So thank you for the discussion. I appreciate it. Yeah, Ms. Wethel.
I just want to make a comment that very much you have functioned in your role, Mayor, as a director of strategic partnerships for our city. And I don't think the public knows fully about how much work you do in advocacy to our federal and state partners, how present you are at very important decisions and tables. I just want to commend you on those efforts. But you cannot replace a full-time position at the City of Dubuque as Director of Strategic Partnerships. And so I agree with your urgency. I was hoping you were going to come up with multiple ways that we could fund this, that you had already gone through the budget and found when you mentioned it. So, but I appreciate that these discussions are really difficult. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, Ms. Wethel. Thank you very much for those kind words. And no, I'm just not as brilliant as the finance team and Mike in terms of digging through everything and figuring that out. So I understand that when we ask for this and it comes back to us, that a lot of work goes into the challenging decision that we have before us here. So I do appreciate that. And before I take it to a vote, I didn't get the opportunity to specifically say thank you to all the staff, especially those of you who presented to us in these last few weeks. We really appreciate this process. We really do. We joke about it, and we joke about how late we have to stay up sometimes, but we really do appreciate this process. And I appreciate that I live in a city that goes through this process. As a resident of Dubuque, I'm very, very happy that you take the time that you do to explain all these things and get this all in front of everybody. So thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I think we should also give kudos to Terry Goodman for all that she does for us at the federal level, and the work that I do with the League of Cities on IT as well. She is my partner. Chris Coleman has been my partner.
Yep.
So we have been quite instrumental in some of the advocacy things that are actually on Capitol Hill and some of the AI documents that have been published, and could not have done it without the IT support here of Chris and her team. So not only kudos to them, but also I think Terry has just been there for us as needed, as required, plus more.
Yeah, thanks, Ms. Farber.
Yeah.
All right, well, the motion before us here is to receive and file, adopt the two resolutions for the fiscal year 26 budget recommendation. So without further ado, Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
We'll move on to action items. Action item number 1 is establishing water utility rates for fiscal year 2026.
Before I take a motion, let me just explain real quick so anybody who's watching can understand what's about to happen. All you're going to hear pretty much is motioning and seconding. And we're going to do it a lot, and it's just going to go, go, go. And the reason is generally, there's always opportunity for any further discussion if we want it as action items. So if there's any council members that want to intervene and speak, they can. However, most of what you're going to see on here are things that we've been talking about a lot. So we've already had these discussions primarily, and usually when we get to this point, we are ready to vote and we move along. With that said, if there is any discussion, totally open to that, but I'll entertain a motion for action item number 1.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones.
I move to receive and file the communications and further move that the requirement that a proposed ordinance be considered and voted on for passage at 2 council meetings prior to the meeting in which it is to be finally passed be suspended.
Second?
Got a motion by Jones, second by Resnick. Any discussion?
Just one more sentence to add on to what you just said. These are all ordinances that are required to be changed to accomplish the budget that we just adopted. So that's why they're going to go fast.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. All right, Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones.
I move final consideration and passage of the ordinance.
Second?
Motion by Jones, second by Resnick. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
That motion passes 7-0.
Action item number 2 is establishing sanitary sewer utility rates for fiscal year 2026.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Roussel.
I move to receive and file, and further move that the requirement that a proposed ordinance be considered and voted on for passage at 2 council meetings prior to the meeting at which it is to be finally passed be suspended.
Second by Sprank.
Motion by Roussel, second by Sprank. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Roussel.
I move final consideration and passage of the ordinance.
Second by Sprank.
Got a motion by Roussel, second by Sprank. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Jones. Roussel.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Action item number 3 is establishing solid waste utility rates for fiscal year 2026.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones.
I move to receive and file the communications and further move that the requirement that proposed ordinance be considered and voted on for passage at 2 council meetings prior to the meeting in which it is to be finally passed be suspended.
Second by Farber.
Got a motion by Jones, second by Farber. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones.
I move final consideration and passage of the ordinance.
Second by Farber.
Got a motion by Jones, second by Farber. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Action item number 4 is establishing stormwater management utility rates for fiscal year 2026.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Roussel.
I move to receive and file, and further move that a requirement that a proposed ordinance be considered and voted on for passage at 2 council meetings prior to the meeting at which it is to be finally passed be suspended.
Second by Wethel.
Motion by Roussel, second by Wethel. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Roussel.
I move final consideration and passage of the ordinance.
Second by Wethel.
Got a motion by Roussel, second by Wethel. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Action item number 5 is 5-year street construction program for fiscal years 2026 through 2030.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Wethel.
I move to receive and file and adopt the resolution.
Second by Sprank.
Got a motion by Wethel, second by Sprank. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Action item number 6 is Planning Services Department increased fees for fiscal year 2026.
Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Farber.
Move to receive and file and adopt the resolution.
By Sprank.
Motion by Farber, second by Sprank. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Farber.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Resnick. Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Jones. Roussel. Wethel.
Aye.
Passes 7-0. Well, we have done it. We have reached the end. Thanks again to everyone. Enjoy your rest. We will be adjourned.